Hi, I'm Greg Sizemore, president of the Construction Users Roundtable, commonly called CURT, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Construction Connections powered by CURT. CURT is an organization which represents primarily owners, and we share resources, experiences, and perspectives to help you be better equipped and get more construction for the money. Each episode features a world-renowned subject matter expert whom we do a deep dive into their particular area of interest. And we're delighted that you've joined us today for the discussion of women in construction and what the future looks like for them and what the industry needs to do to respond to their unique needs. You can also get more information at curt.org or the number that will appear at the very end of this podcast if you're interested in learning more about CURT. But for now, let me introduce to you my friend and colleague, Dr. Gretchen Gagel. Gretchen has dedicated her life and her career to helping leaders, teams, and organizations achieve success and greatness. Some of her clients have included such CURT members as General Motors, Procter & Gamble, Black & Veatch, and so many others. Her purpose is to help them institute sustainable change that leads to higher levels of performance, and she has done grandly in that area. Her passion, however, is for women's leadership issues. As a working mom and president of the Women's Foundation of Colorado, she has developed a deep passion to invest in women in our industry. And we're going to learn more about some resources that she has available for you, some insights and perspectives, which will help you make better decisions when it comes to addressing the women in your organization. She's written several books, but her latest one is entitled Building Women Leaders, a blueprint for women thriving in the construction industry. We're going to do a little deeper dive in the contents of that book in just a moment. On a personal note, Dr. Gagel holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, an MBA, and a PhD in Organization Performance, Learning, and Change. So after a lifetime of leadership study, of delving into the role of women in construction, I'm happy to introduce to you our very special guest speaker for this episode, Dr. Gretchen Gagel. Gretchen, thanks for joining us.
Greg, such a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, and thanks for getting up early to be on this episode of Construction Connections. So I want to start just a little bit to create some context, and foundation for our comments. How did you get involved in the construction industry? Tell us a little bit about your journey so we know you better.
Yeah, it's funny, growing up, my father was a construction equipment dealer. And when you sell construction equipment, most of your best friends are contractors. So I kind of grew up in the industry. But when I approached my father about going to engineering school, he really didn't think it was a good choice for me. And in fact, when I turned down my Harvard admission to go to engineering school, he disowned me. He was really upset about it. And I co-opted for Lone Star Gas during my engineering schooling, and first went into manufacturing. Ralston Purina hired me as their first female operations manager. So 62 operations managers in the United States, all male except for me. I had a great career with Ralston Purina. I ended up running a plant with 800 employees when I was 27 in upstate New York. But my husband and I decided to settle in Denver. I did my MBA, and that's when I worked to work for FMI. So 1994 seemed like just a great choice to go into management consulting. Woman number two, Cynthia Paul, was the first woman hired there. I was woman number two in 45 years. And really, I just fell in love with the construction industry. I just love it.
And that's about the time we connected. So we've been professional colleagues for a very long time, and I've always admired your work and your passion and the content of your training. Now, let's talk about that a minute. What prompted you to start running women's leadership programs in our industry? What was the driver?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was just reading an article about how the universe tells you things, and sometimes you just have to listen to it. So after FMI, I did step away from the construction industry to run the Women's Foundation of Colorado. And at 40, I was in community with women for the first time in my life. I had been almost entirely with men, as you can imagine, manufacturing, engineering school, construction. And I came back into the industry as president of Continuum Advisory Group. I said I'd do that for 5 years, back on a plane, 120 flights a year, and was doing my PhD on the weekends, which made for a lot of busy. Let's just put it that way.
Well, sure.
When my second partner and I decided to move to Australia, he is Australian, to be with his family. And I said, I think I'm just going to take a break. I just need to relax. And we were only going to be there for 2 years. I started teaching at the Australian National University in their MBA program. And I went to deliver a paper at a conference, a pipeline conference. Quanta Services had been a client of mine in the US. They own companies in Australia. They introduced me to the head of Australia. He said, join the Pipeline Association. I'm like, okay. I started at Lone Star Gas as an intern. And Greg, you'll really appreciate this because it was the CEO of that association, Steve Davies. He had a senior leader panel, as you do, right, at your conferences. And it was a large pipeline company and a large contractor and a large engineering firm. And we were in Darwin, which is literally in the middle of nowhere. And he, in front of the entire audience, said, I'm embarrassed there's not a woman on this panel. It didn't even cross my mind. We have to do better for women. And so I took him out for coffee a few weeks later and said, the American Gas Association has a women's leadership program. I've spoken there before. Let's reach out to them and see if we can replicate it in Australia. And that's how it started. And we are now kicking off cohort 10 of that leadership program in the pipeline industry in about 3 weeks. And
That's fantastic.
then I started thinking, maybe this is maybe what I'm supposed to be doing. I also do mixed gender first time leader programs. I really like working with technical people that are just coming into management and leadership roles. But obviously, being a woman in construction, my work with women is special to me.
That is such a wonderful story. And of course, we're very proud to have you leading our CURT Women in Construction Leadership Initiative. And I think we're into our second cohort, and we're looking for another one to launch here shortly. And you can find out more about that. To our listeners, you can find more about that by either calling the office and talking to Rana, who helps coordinate that, or you can go to CURT.org and find some information on the CURT Women in Construction Leadership Initiative. We're going to talk about that just a little later on. Now, you've written several books over the course of your career, Gretchen. Tell us about your latest book, Building Women Leaders. What is the essence of it? What drove you to write a book and launch it so successfully?
Well, this is where the universe kept talking to me because about, oh gosh, 2 or 3 years into running the women's leadership and still consulting, doing my management consulting to companies, etc. Wiley Publishing actually reached out to me, one of their author acquisition people in the United States, who had seen some of my posts on LinkedIn and asked me to write this book. I didn't, I, and there were days when I wish I said no. I have to be 100% perfectly honest because writing a 340-page book and a highly referenced book is very challenging. But I dug into it, and there's the thing I'm most proud about with the book. It's first of all, it's just a good leadership book. And anybody can read it. Greg, you could read it, and as a man, and I want men to read the book, but I interviewed 40 or 50 industry leaders. Tom Riley, president of Turner. I mean, people that Mike Nara, retired from General Motors, is in the book. And it's really many voices talking about acknowledging the unconscious bias and dominant culture that women deal with in construction, but then really going on to just say, okay, how are males allies? How do we take our personal brand out into the world? How do we build successful, high trusting, high performing teams? How do we impact the culture of our organization? How do I find a mentor or sponsor? So, yeah, it was really fun to write. And it's really fun being out on a book tour and speaking in multiple places about the book. And then people are starting to read it and give me feedback. So a lot of fun.
What do you feel, Gretchen, are the benefits of having specialized leadership programs for women? So a lot of companies have launched leadership training, leadership initiatives internally, especially the larger ones, for all their people, male and female. Why the need for a specialized focus on the ladies in our industry?
Yeah. So having run, I think between pipelines, cranes, and CURT, 14 cohorts now of this women's leadership program, I really deeply get it. And if you had told me 30 years ago you were sending me to a women's leadership program, I would have probably been upset. I was doing everything I could to fit in. I mean, you can probably picture me, Greg, in the 90s with my blue blazer and my khakis and my penny loafers and smoking cigars with the guys when I played golf. Yeah, I did everything to fit in with the men. I didn't want to be called out. I just wanted, and I wasn't trying to be a trailblazer. People are coming up and saying, "Thank you for being a trailblazer." I just love my work. I didn't walk in thinking I'm going to be the woman that crushes it today. I was just another management consultant um, who had a lot of fun, has had a lot of fun advising General Motors on how to spend billions of dollars. But what I now understand, it's an and, not an or. Giving men and women the opportunity together to learn about leadership is important, but giving women an opportunity to kind of let their hair down and talk about some of the challenges. And one of the things that I hear quite a bit is, I thought it was me. I thought I was the problem. Because I'm having a problem with confidence, or I'm being spoken over in meetings or whatever. And so there's this camaraderie and this confidence building in that it's not just me. The number one microaggression against women in the workplace is being spoken over, and we've all seen it happen in meetings, right? And then there's the network that they build of support where they're just that camaraderie. And men will say, well, we need that from men. Well, most of the industry is male. So you have that a lot, right? So that's a little bit of why I think it's important.
So, what are the key takeaways in that new book, Building uh, Leadership in the female segment of our industry? What are two or three takeaways? What would compel someone who's just now being introduced to the book to pick it up and read it?
Yeah. So I took in my PhD, I studied leadership, org culture, and change and agility. I wanted to understand how leaders create nimble organizations that can deal with all the craziness going on in the business and environment, all the change in the world. I've been CEO of two companies, probably more than two, now that I think about that. I've advised a lot of senior leaders. So I took all that knowledge about leadership and created my own framework called grounded self leadership. And so much of leadership theory is about interaction. It's how you influence people. It's how you convince people to change behavior. But for me, leadership really starts by being grounded in your personal values and what you stand for. And Greg, if you think of the great leaders that you and I have interacted with over the years, you know what they stand for. You know what Steve Edwards, former CEO of Black and Veatch, stood for, right? When he was CEO. And then being rock solid in that, and then thinking, how do I have courage and humility? Humility being one of the most important things in leadership. How do I use my brain to think critically? And then how do I take my brand out into the world in a confident way? So that's kind of the foundation of my thoughts on leadership.
I am so glad that you wrote that book and shared with us your perspectives. As I've said before, CURT is an organization that shares perspectives, mutual experiences, and resources on how to improve. And I believe this is a fabulous resource. And to our listeners, if you're interested in how to get a copy of that book, I suppose it's on Amazon. Am I right, Gretchen?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And if organizations, there are several organizations that are buying multiple copies for their senior leaders, male and female. I just want to stress this again. Hugh Rice wrote one of the forewords, Jan Tuckman wrote the other. It's male and female. I can actually get people group discount codes through Wiley. So if an organization wanted to buy 30 or 40 copies for their senior leaders, that's available as well.
And we're glad to promote it for you. Uh, I want to pause just a moment and let our listeners know that the next meeting coming up of the Construction Users Roundtable is going to be right here in Cincinnati, Ohio, very close to the airport, September the 16th and 17th at the Cincinnati Marriott Hotel. Gretchen's going to be in attendance with us as well, and we'll be carrying on some of the cohort work that we've begun at CURT. So if you want to know more information about CURT or our September event, please go to curt.org, or you can call the number that you'll see at the end of this podcast. Our special workshop is actually on modularization and modularization strategies, and how owners can make early decision processes better and work for them for a more effective modularization experience. So again, we want to invite you to that meeting. And if you have questions, just give us a call, visit the website, and we'll go from there. Gretchen, I want to ask you for just a moment to talk about what you feel, uh, why have the cohorts, and we've done two, we'll have more at CURT, why are they so successful? And what experience should leaders, female leaders, or those aspiring to be leaders who want to be a part of one of these cohorts, tell us a little bit about it. What should they expect with respect to content and experience?
Yeah. And, leadership is about influencing. It's not about a title. I think that I've seen a lot of people with big titles and nobody's following them, and a lot of people with no direct reports that are leading in a magnificent way. The reason the program, I think this program in particular has been so successful is that we do a day and a half kickoff. Every cohort creates their own definition of leadership. We talk about the difference between management and leadership. A lot of people think they're leading, they're actually managing. Both are important, but there is a difference between managing and leading. We talk about personal brand, back to grounded self leadership. What do I stand for? What are my values? We talk about how to find mentors and sponsors. And then each cohort selects their topics for the balance of the program. So we have 2 or 3 virtual sessions, and then we have a day and a half closeout in person again. But each session, we're going back to their personal development plans, and they are asked to pick one thing to work on, not 5, not 10, when we come out of that first session. Then at the next virtual session, we debrief, and they're very active. There's lots of remixing. You get to meet every person. It's not a lot of me talking like right now, but we hold them accountable to try new things, because that's how we learn as leaders. It's like golf, right? If your putting's not working, you try something different. You try a new putting stance or hold your hands in a different way. So becoming a more effective leader is about trying new things. And then we give a lot of positive feedback to people. And then we learn about a new topic and we try a new thing. And so we're really changing, building skills and changing behaviors. And that's, you want there to be real outcomes from the program. And that's what I'm hearing.
What is the follow through? So and we're, by the way, we're very proud to be engaged in this with you at the Construction Users Roundtable, and we're going to do all we can to promote it and increase its visibility in our organization. What are some of the experiences the females have after the cohort sessions are over with? What can a company expect in terms of improved performance from their ladies?
Yeah. One survey we did in the pipeline industry, 90% of participants reported an increase in confidence. And an increase in confidence is going to increase performance. I mean, it's just, and one thing that literally brought me to tears, we were doing a panel of past participants for an upcoming cohort. And I think this woman had been out for 2 or 3 years, and she said during the panel, Gretchen, I've been meaning to email you. After 10 years of a stalled career, I've had 2 promotions in 2 years, and this program has changed my life. Now, not everyone is going to have that. Yeah, I try and meet everybody in their leadership journey, and people get out of it what they put into it. And they develop a plan at the end of the program for how they're going to continue to develop their leadership. Uh, the program is designed, because I know a lot about a lot of different things. I'm a generalist, right? It touches the tops of emotional intelligence, how to have difficult conversations, how to negotiate, how to build your confidence, how to manage your time, how to prioritize, whatever the topics are that they choose. But what that hopefully does is inspire people when they say, look at their leadership inventory and say, I really need to work more on time management, to go take another course in that, or take another course in emotional intelligence, or go read a book. So really it's how you're a lifetime learner. I still have a coach. I coach CEOs and I still have a coach. She has a master's in neuroscience. We're learning about the brain. So I'm not a fully formed leader at 60. By the way, my birthday is September 15th. So,
I was told, and so happy birthday in
well, you
advance.
can celebrate my birthday at the CURT meeting. So
Yeah,
everybody should show up
we were
for my
discussing
birthday.
that before I came on board. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. Um, Explain to our listeners what some of the built-in, you mentioned earlier in the show, the built-in biases. Explain to our listeners what some of those built-in biases are that are likely unintentional. Now, there's always some nefarious characters, in a bell curve distribution of people. But what are some of the built-in barriers that have evolved over time which can inhibit uh, women in leadership positions? And then we're going to talk for a few minutes about what we can do to begin to address those barriers, break down those barriers. But what are they, in your opinion, Gretchen? What are some of the more profound barriers?
Yeah. So the number one thing to understand about bias is we all have it and we need it. Bias, Howard Ross, noted social activist on my podcast, explained it in a way that makes a lot of sense to me. Bias is the file folders that allow us to sort information really quickly. And he used an example. Our prefrontal cortex behind our forehead is where we do our strategic thinking. When someone slams on the brakes in front of you in your car, you don't want to have to take the time to go to your prefrontal cortex and go, gosh, what should I do? Right? You slam on the brakes too, so you don't run into the back of that car. So but be present to the unconscious bias. And I'll give you a really simple example. When I was writing the chapter, I was flying to Washington, D.C. to go to the AGC's Diversity and Inclusion Committee meeting. And I got out of Reagan Airport and got in a shared ride car. And a young man, probably 30, said to me, and I was in a suit, business suit. And he said, oh, a busy week. And I said, yep. Yeah, Kansas City, Chicago, DC, New York. And he said, oh, are you a flight attendant? And I said, no, I'm a business executive. And I lift up unconscious bias graciously. I said, do you think if I was a man that you would have asked me that question? And he said, no. And gosh, I probably would have asked him if he was a pilot. And so those are the things that, as you said, they're not malicious. If you and I go out to dinner and I hand them my credit card, there's a 90% chance they're going to hand my credit card back to you at the end of dinner. It's just, and so understanding and stopping and thinking, ooh, who handed me this credit card? Gretchen. All right, this is not Greg. This is Gretchen's credit card. Um, and I think that's the real first important step, is to understand that we all have unconscious bias. We all have it. But how is it influencing our hiring? How is it influencing who we're promoting or who we're listening to?
Speaking of promoting and listening to, you're obviously very well studied. What are some resources in the marketplace that you would recommend? Obviously, in addition to your book or the cohort series that CURT has underway, what are some other tools or resources that you follow in our industry that you put your finger on the pulse of that you have found helpful for this issue? Do you have any
Yeah, for
suggestions?
unconscious bias in particular.
What's it called?
Yeah, so there's lots of resources. There's places you can go take low cost courses like Udemy or Daily Om or places like that to learn about unconscious bias. I spend a lot of time with Harvard Business Review. I get their daily management tip. Once again, people are like, but I find a lot of really interesting things. Lee Jordan, I read an article of his in Harvard Business Review about how we need to talk about privilege at work. He was head of diversity and inclusion, test my memory, Chevron, Shell, one of the two. I had him on my podcast to talk about why do we need to talk about privilege at work. I think, Greg, that there's one other thing that I learned studying agility, getting information from diverse sources. So it's great that we have CURT, CII, their research, the Construction Industry Roundtable, AGC. I get all their AIA, I get all their newsletters, but I would encourage people to broaden where they get their information from. There is a great book out there called 4 Days to Change by Dr. Michael Welp. Dr. Michael Welp and his partner Bill Proudman have been helping white men understand dominant culture for 30 years. And this is not a slam on white men. It's just understanding that when the dominant culture is white male and you're in the bubble, you don't really understand what life looks like for people that aren't in the bubble, that are trying, like me, to smoke cigars while I'm playing golf and fit in with the guys and just get in the bubble, get in the bubble with everybody. So I encourage people to, yes, read everything in our industry, but pick up a book like The Patient Will See You Now, Eric Topol. Great book about disruption in the healthcare industry, recommended to me by a FERC commissioner in the energy industry. And I thought, why is she recommending a book in healthcare? But I think broadening our horizons outside of our industry is a good way to understand the complexity of the world.
That's great advice. And we've jotted some of these resources down and we'll include them. Do you have any advice for young ladies who may be listening, watching, that are considering construction as a career, either as a tradesperson or in the management leadership roles? What advice would you give to young ladies that are pondering their future and considering our industry as an option?
Do it. We, Greg, and I'm advocating in this new global institute I'm starting. It's called Women Thriving in Construction. The website's womenthrivingin construction.org. I want to hit Netflix series. I want a Super Bowl ad about women in construction. And I spend a lot of time with people outside of construction explaining why construction is such a great industry and why we need it. We build and maintain the assets of society. And I think that's what women need to understand, because it's not just doctors are important, right? They cure us. Um, Engineers are important because they give us the ability to charge our cell phones, to drive on a road, to fly out of an airport, to have a baby in a hospital, to build a school, to build the stadiums. In fact, I have this grand idea to approach Lego, because I thought, what would a girl want to build in Lego? Taylor Swift Stadium. Let's build things that are fun for girls, right? We don't need the Captain America shield, but it can just be so fulfilling. Building the Baltimore Ravens Stadium was one of the most fun experience. And Alice Hoffman, very rare to have a woman executive running a program like that in the 90s. We're still friends. I just visited her in our alpaca ranch in Chile. You can accomplish such amazing things and have such a sense of satisfaction when you drive by something and you know that you helped build it and that you are building civilization. So that's my advice.
That is such good advice. And so you've been listening to Dr. Gretchen Gagel, an expert, a subject matter expert on women in construction, and particularly women who aspire to be leaders in a male dominated industry. So we encourage you to get in touch with her to get that new book and to join us in September if your schedule allows and meet her personally here in Cincinnati, Ohio. More information about that at CURT.org. How can our listeners, Gretchen, get in touch with you? What is the best way to just go directly to you? What contact information would you offer us?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Gretchen Gagel, like a bagel, makes my last name really easy. My website is Gretchen Gagel as well, gretchengagel.com. And yeah, I love hearing from people out there, and always happy to talk about the construction industry in general and how we lift up our future leaders.
Great. You've been listening to Construction Connections, powered by CURT, with subject matter expert Dr. Gretchen Gagel, personal friend and professional colleague for decades now. And we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you at our next episode of Construction Connections, powered by CURT.
Thanks, Greg.